The Chinese Grand Prix weekend is underway, and who had Lewis Hamilton taking pole for the sprint race after struggling to a 10th place finish in Australia? A Lando Norris mistake on his final flying lap kept him out of contention for the front row, but maybe that's for the best because what could be more exciting than a Hamilton versus Verstappen front row? Speaking of the Red Bull driver, his second place start will be a full 18 places ahead of his new teammate Liam Lawson. No one was expecting the New Zealander to be challenging Verstappen on track, but after 2 qualifying sessions, he's only beaten 1 car, and that was a Haas that was so bad the team genuinely thought it was broken. It has been as bad a start as it could be to life as a full-time F1 driver for Lawson, and the pressure is building. Is he in trouble at Red Bull already, or should he not be blamed for his struggles? Today I'll check it out, so don't go anywhere. Following a challenging Australian Grand Prix, Liam Lawson would have been keen to put that behind him and put in a performance that would shut up helmet Marko. Obviously, an appearance in the 3rd session of sprint qualifying would have been ideal, but in F1's hyper-competitive field, even a decent showing in SQ2 would have done. What he didn't want was a repeat of qualifying at the season opener, but that's what he got. He had a lap time deleted and couldn't get his tyre pressures down for a second flying lap. Down on grip and out of time, Lawson was unable to recover and ended up plumb last, over half a second off safety and just over 0.8 of a second slower than his teammates' time in the same session. Lawson can hardly be called a rookie anymore, with 11 races under his belt in 2023 and 2024, driving for AlphaTauri before the team rebranded to become the Racing Bulls. With 12 laps remaining in the Australian Grand Prix, Liam spun off the track, rounding off what he described as a really tough weekend. Mistakes cost him in qualifying there as well, where he was knocked out in the first session. It's something that I'll reflect on and look over everything, from qualifying to the race performance, and myself and reset for China, Lawson said. Liam is now going to have to reset himself again overnight. Points in the sprint race are out of the question. Simply put, he doesn't look comfortable or confident enough in that Red Bull car to take it through the field like Antonelli did for Mercedes last weekend. Liam's sprint race has to be about finding comfort and confidence and starting to expand the limits of what he can do in that Red Bull car. Then he can come back for the Grand Prix qualifying and hopefully start a little further up the grid and give himself a platform to start to build on. However, one thing has to be cleared up. Lawson is not going to beat Verstappen. In fact, he probably won't even push the 4-time world champion. 4 years ago, Verstappen may have been labelled as an ungrateful, over-aggressive upstart who raced the wrong way, whatever that means. But now he's widely and rightly considered the best driver of his generation. Liam was given the target of getting as close to Verstappen as possible this season, with Red Bull looking to regain the Constructors' Championship from McLaren. However, getting as close as possible does not mean beating. And Lawson has been very clear that anyone expecting him to challenge Max is stupid. In this sport, what happens is that your teammate is your biggest competitor, but my teammate is also Max Verstappen, Lawson explained. A 4-time champion who has been with this team for almost a decade. For me, it's a great opportunity to learn from him and develop myself. I'm still very inexperienced, I'm aware of that. If anyone thinks you can just beat Max when you're just coming in, then you are just stupid. Over time, Liam will develop and grow as a driver, but he isn't going to turn into a generational talent. However, this is Red Bull we're talking about. Will he be given the time to develop and improve? Or will Red Bull dig into the old playbook and do their classic hire and fire for Verstappen's teammate? Well, the word from within the team wasn't particularly encouraging after last weekend. While the Red Bull Motorsport advisor Helmut Marko called Isaac Hajar's debut for the Racing Bulls embarrassing, he gave Liam Lawson a 5-race deadline to show what he can do. He wanted to show what he could do, Marko said, and unfortunately that went wrong. We have to let him cool down a bit now and observe his development over the first 3 to 5 races. Last place in sprint qualifying won't have been the development that Lawson or Marko wanted. What's worse is that the pressure is coming from outside his own team as well. But are his struggles completely his own fault, or do Red Bull need to take some of the blame for Lawson's performances? Well, before I address those points, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch all of the news and analysis of the 2025 F1 season, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thank you so much. So, Red Bull are Red Bull. We all know their history of sacking drivers that don't match up to Max Verstappen's level. Whether it is Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon or Sergio Perez, it's been how they operate the team for a number of years now. Red Bull's competitors are well aware of that as well. The likes of McLaren know that if they can keep the pressure on Liam Lawson with the occasional comment here and there, then Red Bull's history of sacking Verstappen's teammates will stay in his mind. Zak Brown took the time after the Australian Grand Prix to start the psychological warfare against Red Bull, who are expected to compete with McLaren for both championships this season. Yuki did a great job, Brown told Sky Sports F1 after the race, adding that the Japanese driver is probably the guy who should have been in the Red Bull if you look at how he's performed, but they seem to make some strange driver choices from time to time. Just a simple one-liner that Zak knew would make its way to the Red Bull driver through the media. It is the kind of annoying little dig that might seem like nothing, but enough pinpricks can fell the biggest man. When he was asked about Brown's statement in the build-up to the Chinese Grand Prix, Lawson was blunt. "I couldn't care less what Zak says," he stated. "I haven't spoken to him, I don't really think ever, and I haven't read any social media for the last 2 weeks." Exactly the kind of defensive retort that will tell the McLaren boss that his comment hit home. For Yuki Tsunoda, Lawson's underwhelming performance so far this season is exactly what he wanted to see. To be overlooked for the Red Bull seat this time around must have been crushing. It really drove home that Red Bull are not interested in promoting Tsunoda for the first team, a decision that he's making look a little foolish so far this year. He qualified 5th in Australia for the Racing Bulls, 13 places ahead of Lawson, with a Q1 time almost a second quicker than the Red Bull drivers. Yuki will start tomorrow's sprint race 12 places ahead of Lawson, putting 4 tenths on the driver who is supposed to be in the faster car. Yuki's contract is up at the end of this season, and if Red Bull really aren't interested in him anymore, then he'll have to find a home outside of the organization he's driven for his entire career. When asked about Zak Brown's comments and the premature discussions about him replacing Lawson at some point this season, Yuki said, "It's a bit of a tradition for our group. It's positive, but at the same time, I just have to keep doing what I'm doing." In the end, they chose this lineup last year at the end of the season. Maybe they have a clear plan for the future. I don't know. Fortunately for Lawson, Red Bull made the decision a few years ago that Yuki doesn't have the character to drive for their first team. Probably a fair assumption if you were talking about Yuki in 2022, but he's a different driver now, and if Red Bull do let him go at the end of the year, he'll be an excellent asset to whomever signs him on. So the pressure is building on Lawson from inside and outside the team, despite it only being Friday of the second weekend of the season. But are his struggles really his own fault? Obviously, Liam needs to perform better. However, he can only drive the equipment he has, and at the moment, that equipment is pretty terrible. Verstappen has been covering up the problems with the Red Bull car since mid-2023. Red Bull themselves admitted that they had ignored Sergio Perez's complaints about the car for well over a year, as they made it less and less drivable, causing the Mexican driver to fall further and further behind his teammate. Red Bull's winter development plan was to try and resolve those problems and make the car more drivable, but they haven't achieved that. Watching Liam drive in China, he's driving scared. He's soaring at the wheel as the back end of the car tries to whip out on him. He can't attack the corners because he doesn't know if the car will spin underneath him, and his lap times are reflected in that. How do we know that this isn't just a Lawson problem? Well, in the same way it wasn't just a Perez problem last season. In 2024, Verstappen started to voice his concerns about the car as it became unstable and challenging to drive as the season went on. Verstappen is saying the exact same stuff this year as well. The difference is that Verstappen is a step above any other driver on the grid. His ability to drive fast in spite of the instability of the car is incredible. He's extracting pace from that Red Bull, which no other driver can. Yes, Liam is underperforming and needs to improve, but Red Bull have to realize that the car they've built is not as good as Verstappen is making it look. Whether it's Perez, Lawson, or Tsunoda in that Red Bull second seat, they're going to struggle until the team make the car more drivable. It's as simple as that. What's your opinion on Lawson's start to life in Formula 1? Let me know in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.